Good evening. Welcome to the special meeting of the Board of Trustees, April 24th, 2026. Calling the meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. Confirming the attendance of the presence of a quorum. So I'm here. Trustee Giuliano?
Here.
Trustee Franco?
Here.
Trustee Hill?
Here.
Trustee Ugrinsky?
Here.
Okay, we're all here. Also at the table with us is Treasurer Stephen Gafka, our administrative financial consultant, Charlene Betts, and Michelle Ferrante, Deputy Treasurer. So thanks for you guys for being here. Now, can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I called this meeting as a final before we have a vote to adopt the budget on April 29th. And I thought there were some additional considerations that were discussed and considered, because their considerations are considered, in between the last meeting and today. And I just wanted to get some of our last opinions and feedback to some of the budget adjustments that were recommended or noted. The treasurer has put together a fairly comprehensive document that shows us how each budget scenario changes the actual tax rate. And he has plugged in the things we talked about at the last meeting and considered them with a $1.50 per hour metered parking increase and a $2 parking increase. So those are reflected in the 1A and the 1B all the way down to 8A and 8B. Those are the variations are the the parking rate, how it impacts the levy and the tax rate. Also, I just wanted to, I've had conversations with folks, and which is something that I like to do, because I like to get input from people to go into what my thinking is, and I know that's all I'll say. I'm accused of having backroom deals and making backroom deals, but what I do is I talk to people and I take their opinions. And I ask them for their opinions, and I ask them for their input, which helps me bring forward additional thinking and additional ideas. So the treasurer and I had a conversation with representatives from the commercial district, and there was something that, an idea that came across out of that, two ideas actually, because I think the parking rates, when they went up to $3, I think the people that impacted most, it didn't really impact the foot traffic in the village, according to the app that we have. It's called Placer AI. It tells you the foot traffic, where they go, when they're here, where they're from, et cetera, data that's collected through phones. So the $3 an hour parking didn't really impact foot traffic, but what it did impact was employees of the businesses. Because it ended up costing them so much more money to come to work every day. So one of the options, and this is obviously the $3 isn't back in any of these scenarios, these variations, but there is the $2 and there is the $1.50. Stephen, you did, before I go into what these ideas are, you did a little research on the first what's today, the 24th? The first 24 days of parking enforcement, and in terms of use of meter usage, and paying, and so what's the hourly change of how many average hours people spend in a parking spot in the village?
So all of last year was around 2.43 hours. And this year, to date, it's up to 2.67. So it's an extra 15 minutes per session. And we've had 4,656 sessions just in the last 7 days. So when you add all that up, it's a lot of extra time that the cars are now there. Just those 14 minutes add up. So that's with the rate going down. So time has increased on the length of transaction.
So it's somewhat self-correcting, maybe. But if people stay longer, they pay more. But anyway, not that significant. The concepts that came out of the conversation were, one, if we could do something to sort of acknowledge the concerns of the commercial district, and that could be by issuing perhaps a second employee pass for the storefronts, people who work in the village. For the people who run a business in the village, they already get one hang tag for parking. If we would consider issuing a second one, or actually selling an employee parking pass for the season. So we already approved the sale of parking passes to Belterre residents for the season at $100 a season. And it was discussed that maybe that would be an option to help employees, not have to continue to go back to the app and check the app and make sure that they had their parking space updated. A lot of people forget, they get tickets. And I'm seeing this come up a little bit also just in conversation on social media. So I just wanted to put that forward. And it doesn't mean, like, if you estimated $12,000 increase. Look, every penny counts, I guess, since we're looking at $500 printers. But so that's a concept. So any thoughts about that? Because I don't think I'm not sure if we have to plug it into the budget per se, but it does bring in a little extra revenue.
Well, it would increase revenue, so that is the hope, right? What would we sell? And maybe this hasn't been decided yet, but what would we sell if we were to sell it?
It was $100
It
was
would
considered.
still be the same $100 that we sell to Belterre.
It's kind of comparable.
The other suggestion, because I've spoken to several of the employees and business owners, and I made a suggestion. Most employees that come to the village live in the town of Brookhaven, and they could easily get a Brookhaven pass. I think it's very inexpensive. It's maybe $30 or $35, and then park in the Brookhaven lot. Now, that solves two things. One, they have inexpensive parking, and two, it's opening up spaces in front of the restaurants and the stores. So I think a plan, if we're going to implement any plan, that has to be part of it, that where the employees are going to get, because it was funny, I went to dinner, birthday party, and I was talking to one of the waitresses, and she goes, if you come here on a Wednesday, the entire parking lot is full of employees. And rather than that happening and taking up spots where customers might not stop, let's see if we can transition them to the Brookhaven lot, if that's a viable option. I think that could be a viable option. The second thing is, Mayor, you and I are similar. I spoke to a few people also, and there was I work with her, I'm an occupational therapist, and her name is Stacy, and she's lived in the village her whole life. And she's very sick right now. And I was talking to her about the budget, and she says, we can't stay here. And we have a lot of people on fixed incomes. So I think while we're adopting this budget, we have to take into consideration the residents of this community. Like this woman, Stacy, who is very sick, who lives with her mother and her daughter, and they're just getting by. It's easy for many of us to say, let's, raise rates, we need to do this, we need to do that. But we have to take into consideration that we are the stewards of the budget here and this community. And we need to really take into consideration that there are many, many residents that are elderly and on fixed incomes. So and that's why, like, Mayor, you and I are very common in that, where we speak to a lot of people in the community. We also like data. So that's why I think it's, this is something that we need to consider as we go forward with this budget conversation tonight. Let's not forget Stacy and her family, because that's important.
I would agree. Trustee Franco, let me just remind us as a group, what we're dealing with is a correction, a financial correction that we are dealing with for events that happened from 2014 on, right? Where monies were moved around, we wound up in a deficit, and now as a municipality, we as trustees have to be the stewards of that as well. So while we are collectively doing everything that we can to take the current budget and reduce it as much as we can, and we'll talk about how, because I think we've nickel and dimed our way to something now, and now we have to start looking at the big buckets, so, which I believe we'll get to in a minute. But, I don't want to miss the fact that we talked about, in last year's budget, we talked about the fact that as a result of the audits that had been done, we found every penny in the couch cushions, right? And that is a one-time event. Once we've used up those funds, that's it. So what we're faced with now is a budget that is really a corrective budget. And if we do a 3-year outlook, we have continuing reduction on LIPA, we have continuing costs going up, so we may have to take this hit, not the one, obviously post the work that we're doing tonight, and, and then our estimates are, was it year over year, what were the increases, the 3 years?
So in working with the intern for the Treasury Department, had her do a 3-year future projection on expenses, and something that I had played with, we're looking at an average over the next 3 years of 600,000 of expense
No, percent increase to the residents for the next 3 years. So this year is going to be painful, but that keeps us in single digits for the 3 years coming, based on our projections.
To answer your question, Trustee Ugrinsky, we're looking at about 5.5 average % levy
Okay.
increase over the next future 3 years.
But it requires us, doing everything we can, which is what we're about to go into. But I just want to make sure that everyone understands where this is most likely to land, because barring what we're about to discuss in terms of not filling open positions, et cetera, those are the big buckets. Everything else is nickel and diming, and really, candidly, we've already done enough of that.
So let's talk about that fund balance for a minute. So if Charlene and Stephen could walk us through the fund balance and why we're here, and what it puts us in a position of having to do, and what kind of risk it puts the village in.
Thank you, Mayor. Trustees, I believe you have in front of you a fund balance reconciliation that shows what our current position is and what the proposed budget presentation and solution is for that fund balance. So end of fiscal year, the last fiscal year with the audit, we had a fund balance of $1.66 million. Of that, 1.13 of that fund balance is owed to the capital fund.
Why?
That's a result of the 2017 to 2023 audit that we did of the capital fund that said that we had overspent on capital projects by $1.13 million without a revenue allocation. That means no grant, no borrowing, nothing. The only source of revenue is fund balance for that, and it was never allocated. So our fund balance position has been overstated for a number of years because of that. And that's also reflected when we look at our cash flow as well. So we have this $1.13 million correction that we need to make, and Budget and Finance Committee has looked at this and has recommended a staged, tiered payback over 5 years, where we would divvy up that $1.13 million and pay it back every year, every 5 years, for the next 5 years, to pay that back to correct it. With that, and on top of the fund balance that was used this year for the snow emergency, which is, we recently just received an additional bill of $154,000 for the cleanup efforts on the 24th and the 25th of February. We're looking at $637,000 of fund balance being used for the snow emergency. What that does, and with our projected rest of the year revenues and expenses, is looking at a potential deficit fund balance of $500,000. So what we need to do, and that's part of the budget process. When you have a budget that's tight, and you don't, and there's no room for bringing in more revenue than expenses, this is what happens with this kind of a situation with the snow emergency. You have no leeway to deal with it. But with the payback, once a year for the next 5 years, the position would be $372,000. So it wouldn't be a deficit. And this gives us the time and ability to bring the budget and expectations on revenues and expenses to a point where we can bring in more revenue with our conservative revenue estimates and underspend on expenses by trying to budget for the worst case scenarios. When you budget tight to the dollar, you don't allow for that. So that's our fund balance position. So that relates to cash in the terms of we are tight on cash to the end of the year. For the fiscal year ending May 31st. So we're looking at how do we make sure that we can stretch that money to the end of the year and correct the fund balance in stages over the next 5 years. And that, in part, it was taken into consideration when building this budget.
So just one caveat to the emergency snow operations. The village declared 2 states of emergency in January and February, and is pulling together all the expenses that it took to address them, which in states of emergency, you're given the authority to do what you have to do to help the safety of the traveling public and the people who live in the village. And so we're waiting for information from FRES or from the state or from federal government.
I think we're waiting for the FEMA approval and through the state at this point.
To hopefully be reimbursed for that $600,000 expense. So that would, assuming that we get it, which we did get reimbursed for a lot of the projects that we did during, and I've said this before, the August storm in 2024, that would push that back up to being in the positive, but that's still not significant. Is that not significant, Charlene?
I mean, could we use that to start building the contingency fund?
Yes, so if you were to expend, because obviously you're expending the money out of current funds,
Mhm.
which would have to come out of surplus as fund balance, as Stephen had projected here. And if you were reimbursed in an ensuing year, I'm sorry, if you were, say for example, the reimbursement comes in the next fiscal year or the fiscal year thereafter, that would come in and, as revenue and certainly be put towards some type of reserve. You can create, actually, the state allows you to create a snow emergency reserve. So you can tuck some money away there. And maybe the board at the end of the year, once you get into the point where you're in a positive cash flow, positive surplus, operating surplus at the end of the year, and you feel comfortable enough, you could start allocating some money to reserves for that.
If we create a snow emergency reserve, is it limited to that? I mean, if we don't use it, can we transfer it out, or does it have to stay?
The way that reserve is under General Municipal Law Section 6 is, I believe that is created by the board, and whatever's created by the board can be undone by the board.
Okay.
So you would, and you would use it, you would set the parameters on which you would use it.
Okay, so the 226 would go down significantly if we got reimbursed for that, or is that correct, or?
Well, the 226 is just for the capital, just to pay back the capital fund with a revenue source.
637.
So the 637 that's what we were hoping to be reimbursed to then go back
Mm-hmm.
into the fund balance as a reserve or however the board decides, once we do get approval for it.
And there's no guarantee that we would be reimbursed that full amount?
There's no guarantee. That would all go through the discussions once FEMA approves it,
Okay.
which could, take months.
But what we're doing is budgeting now because it is a liability, right? So we have to pay it.
Right. It's already, yes.
And to Charlene's point, if we got to this time next year
We haven't paid it yet,
and
not the extra.
we were reimbursed, those monies could be used for a snow contingency fund, or once we're past the snow
it's
period
justified.
for the next
If
fiscal,
it's justified.
then we could decide whether to allocate it to a contingency fund.
You could also decide at the end of the year, say you have a mild winter next year, and the money you have in your snow budget, instead of having that just roll into surplus, you can actually dedicate that into a snow emergency for another year.
Okay.
Helps to smooth out those years where you have a really
spikes.
bad winter.
Okay, all right, so, so what you did for the 3-year, or now 5-year plan that increases 5 and change annually, 5% annually, is that what you said, Stephen?
That's for the 3 years for an expense and revenue projection to relate to taxes. That's not even, it's a rough document that we were
But
working on.
that 226 would be part of that, right?
It would be factored in when building the budget, but it's still a balance sheet journal entry item. There's no cash tied to the 226, but it needs to be repaid and to the capital fund within a reasonable amount of time.
Gotcha,
5 years.
Yes.
okay.
And if memory serves, the Budget and Finance Committee discussed, like, do we rip off the Band-Aid and do it all in 1 year, or do we allocate it over a period of time? And I think we initially discussed that it would, if we could, it'd be great if we could solve this today and then just not have to worry about it going forward, but as a fallback, in order to preserve our fiscal health, we have to spread it out.
All right, so do we want to go into these scenarios a little bit? Which one looks, basically what I would anticipate for Wednesday is that one of these scenarios gets plugged into the final budget that the treasurer is putting together, and we vote on that. So, I'm asking the trustees for their thoughts on which one looks best.
Do we need to walk through them all again, or do you guys remember what we?
Well, I think for the benefit of the public's understanding, it would probably make most sense for the treasurer to walk us through each one.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Thank you. So we'll start with scenario 1. So there's A and B. A is parking at $1.50 an hour. B is parking at $2 an hour when we talk about these scenarios. So 1A is basically all the agreed upon amendments from the last special session that the board had, the special work session. And the impact of that with the metered parking at $1.50 would be a tax decrease of $646,000. That would bring the total levy increase to 17.5% and would bring the tax rate down to a 27.96% increase. It brings the average residential increase to 438 and would bring the commercial increase to 833.
Well, we're talking about, yes, agreed, but we're talking about what the all agreed amendments during special work session and metered are.
Can we just list those? Well, to Kyle's point, Can we list those for the public as well?
Yes, there are many.
Just the big bucket items.
Yeah, I think
We'll
the
do.
highlights from that
Yeah.
list, and you can use your discretion.
Okay, so, well, I'll just go in order of line items, because that's how I have it listed. So, the board, would forego, their salaries for, fiscal 2027. That's a $44,000 decrease. Also not fund Board of Trustees expenses. That's $2,000. The mayor would forego $28,000 of her salary if the village administrator were still in the budget. Treasury office supplies, decrease of $1,500. Village attorney, decrease of $20,000. Labor attorney, decrease of $10,000. Ethics attorney was a decrease of $5,000. If I could pause there for 1 second. It was brought to me yesterday by our senior court clerk that she was a little concerned about the decrease to the ethics budget because of the number of meetings that there could be, that may not be enough money to pay for whatever could potentially come down the pike. So I don't know if that's how the board would like to handle that, but she did express concern to me regarding that cut.
Is that cut in all the scenarios?
Yes.
And what was her alternative?
She did say that she thought she could bring the supply lines down a bit. We could potentially figure out how to get a cheaper printer and reduce the total supplies, but she did.
How much money?
She was talking at least 2,000 on the supply line, and then
Is that what does she feel she needs?
Based on my conversation, 8,000. We had 10 originally, so that would lower it from, instead of a 5,000 decrease to 2,000 decrease.
Do they need the attorney at every meeting? And I guess, could they get
I don't think that's the
associate
expense.
attorney?
Is it her salary and overtime?
No, this is strictly for paid to the attorney.
Oh.
Attorney's fees for the meetings, for any
Okay.
potential issues that come down the pike. We've to date we've spent 9,000. Expect that to land around 10,000 this year. So I just wanted to bring it to the board so that if whatever final decisions are made, you have all the information.
So I guess an outstanding question would be, do they need to attend every meeting, or can they just do the legal work that would come out of those meetings?
That's a good question.
I don't know the answer to that.
We had, in fact, in Southampton, we did not have the attorney attend every
Yeah.
meeting.
I think that's a solution.
So we could
Okay.
get
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Well, then we'll move on. So the clerk's office supplies, she thought we could bring that down a little bit more. So we'll bring that down to 2,000. Not a ton of an impact, but she thought we could get away with less. We talked about there will be no code part-time. There will not be a guard within the code budget. 25,000 decrease there. There was a discussion on using parking capital funds to purchase the capital ticket meters, the equipment, to be able to, for all the ticket scannings. We're just to remind the public and the board, we have 4 machines that are going out of service and will not be supported, so we need to replace them. That's a $21,000 decrease. Again, office supplies down 1,000. Parking credit card fees, the honk mobile fees for the credit card that are passed on to us for the usage would be passed on to the customer directly. That's a $50,000 decrease. We talked about instead of hiring an assistant DPW superintendent, to revert it back to laborer. So that's a decrease of $80,000 for highway salary, and to put 45,309 back in parks as an increase. To net of, with the salary and benefits, a net of about 40,000 total decrease. Tree work down 10,000. Potential to use parking funds for Dickens lights if needed. Otherwise, we're going to try and use insurance money for every Dickens light that gets damaged that we can figure out. But that's a $16,000 reduction. Recreation concerts, $16,000 reduction because of the North Ferry is going to be paying all but $5,000 of the expense. The village will only have to pay $5,000 for one of those concerts, and also a $10,000 donation to the concerts. Part-time recreation, a decrease of $25,000 because that is going to be moved out of recreation village center part-time to a guard position within the current budget. So it's a net neutral, but that's a change. Village center equipment, decrease of $4,700. Village center repair and maintenance, decrease of $25,000 pending a capital plan for the village center. Building planning office supplies, $2,000 decrease. Software, our senior planner said that they only need Nearmap next year, so there's a $6,700 decrease because they're not going to go with the ArcGIS system for next year. They're just going to do Nearmap. So that brings that $6,700 reduction. Community beautification, decrease of $5,000. Medical benefits, slight decrease of $55,000 potentially. And accrued benefit leave. Another thing for the board to be aware of, the accrued benefit leave, there was a recalculation of potential 2 retirements. That's going to increase at $21,500. So the total decrease to expenses was $384,000 with those additional changes. And with the increase to cell tower rent that we discussed, $700 more a month, that's to be voted on Wednesday, I believe. And for the $10,000 hospital contribution to concerts, we're looking at a total tax decrease of $402,000. It's a lot of words, I apologize. But the net effect is a $400,000 decrease based off of the previous meeting.
And wasn't the $50,000 in credit card fees from Honk Mobile, isn't that included in?
Yeah. Yes, I did mention
Did I
that.
miss it?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I did mention that, yep. And I'm still working on the T2. I haven't been successful there yet. I'm working on it.
And with those, which scenario do those decreases represent? On this?
These particular, all of these are except the only change, they're in every single scenario. With the exception of there were several scenarios where we add back the mayor's salary because there would not be a village administrator.
Are the trustees' salaries taken out on
Yes.
all these scenarios?
Yes.
Okay, so scenario 1A and 1B?
So scenario 1A and 1B are just those amendments that were agreed upon and new information. And again, so with parking at $1.50, the levy increase, the total levy increase goes to 17.5% increase. The tax rate would be 27.96% increase. With meter parking at $2 an hour, $926,000 tax levy decrease. That brings the levy total increase to 13.6% and the tax rate to a 22% increase. The effect would be $347 to the average resident and $660 per year to the average commercial taxpayer. So that's scenario 1A and 1B. Scenario 2, is all of the previous, what we discussed with those previous amendments, and add back the mayor's salary and cut the village administrator position from the budget. So with meter parking at $1.50, you're looking at $812,000 tax decrease. That would bring the levy increase to 15% and the tax rate increase to 24.4%.
So in all of these scenarios, the village administrator is configured into them except for where it isn't noted? Like in 1A and B?
1A and B has the village administrator in the budget. 2 does not. 3 does. 4 does. 5 does not. 6 does not. 7 does not, and 8 does not.
What about the principal planner?
That was the principal planner salary is what we were using to make the village administrator. So that is not in the budget either, in any scenario.
Okay, so that was looking at making the village administrator and the director or the administrator for the
Oh,
building
so
and
you're
planning
talking about
department.
building department head
Yes.
position. Oh,
What-
I'm
Did I
sorry.
say something different?
That's the principal planner, which, my apologies.
Sorry, yeah.
So, that is in scenario 1. The building department head is in scenarios 1, 2, 3 is a combination. 4, it's in 4. It's in 5. It's in 6, but it's not in 7, and it's not in 8.
And how much is that?
What was budgeted was 125,000, with another around 64,000 in benefits.
And the administrator, what was
150.
150? Thank you.
Same thing. Same amount with the benefits?
Just a little bit more, but not
Smidgen.
much.
Okay.
67,000, I believe.
And total was 222? right?
222 for the
614
entire,
or
the
something,
whole
yeah.
package.
Well, just to jump in, I think our starting point should be 7B. Let's figure out where we are at 7B and work our way down from there. Again, we cannot come to this community and say, we're gonna give you a 22%, a 27%, a 15%, an 18% increase. That's just untenable. So, my suggestion would be we start at 7B. Let's, so my first question to you is, Stephen, in 7B, this has the deductions that you stated earlier today.
7B does, yes.
It does. Does it have increases in each and every department, or are those increases
It-
zeroed out?
No, 7B has the tentative budget as it was presented with those amendments that were agreed on the last time, and removing all 4 of the current vacant positions out of the budget, and
Correct.
metered parking at $2.
So, all right, so now my next question, my follow-up question is, the department heads submitted budgets in the tentative budget. We just took those $402,000 of deductions out of those departments. What was the total that they were asking for in the tentative budget?
Department by department,
Well,
I don't-
combined.
13,098,500 or 050 was the total tentative budget
Okay.
for everything.
I don't know how everybody else feels, but my opinion is we need to consider 7B and see if there's any more we can trim off from the departments. Because, you know, going to the community and saying we're gonna give you an 11% increase is just, like I said, we have a lot of people on fixed incomes, and we need to do better than this.
Stephen, what was the increase just with the non-discretionary aspects of the budget? What percentage is that?
The total, that was half of the total levy increase. The total non-discretionary increase was 976,000. So
And what
and
percentage
that's-
of the budget is that?
again, non-discretionary is, if it's in the budget, it has to be paid.
Right.
But what would it be, what would the non-discretionary costs be, and what would the percentage be if we didn't include the 4 positions that were added?
Those 4 positions would reduce the salary and benefits by 625,000. So it would bring bring it down to a roughly $350,000 non-discretionary increase by removing those.
So
those
from
four
900 to 350.
positions. To 350, yeah.
Yeah, those are the big impact items. I mean, I don't know whether it even makes sense to go back and start, looking at department by department when we've already come to almost, 402 is the total if you take out some of the non-discretionary related items, and then we take out the vacant positions. Like, I agree with you, 7B is really where we should start, but I'm not sure there's value in going through line by line again and trying to reduce departmental spend any further.
Going through line to line, I agree, maybe not be the best and most prudent way of doing it, but I have to say, to get this number down, what I would suggest is we zero out every department, no increases across the board. You use last year's budget and make it work this year until we get ourselves in some better financial footing. We cannot keep spending that we don't have. We need to kind of look back now and say, listen, if we zeroed out every department, Stephen, to last year's budget, what would the decrease be? Would it be more than $402,000?
I'm not entirely, I'd have to look because there are statutory increases there
Correct.
that would prevent that from being a possibility. Yeah, because there's benefit increases
There's
that no
union-
matter what,
Yeah,
there's salary,
union contractual
there's salary,
obligations,
right,
but
there's salary increases no matter what. There's a union contract, there's gonna be another,
I
there's gonna be
think
a
what Trustee
co-contract.
Franco's asking for is a 0% increase for all discretionary funding by each department.
So the discretionary funding increases, that was 227,000. And as we laid it out, it was heavily involved in like 10 items. The snow removal, the leaf program, attorney costs, which were reduced, community beautification, which was reduced, that was cut back, the tree, which was cut in half. We had that listed, I can pull it up. But the discretionary increases were, pretty much have all been addressed with the board.
So
And-
I think what he's trying to get to is what was last year's or our current fiscal year? What did we budget for for discretionary, and how does that compare to what's in next year's budget?
Please allow me a moment to pull it
Yeah,
up. I will.
I recognize you have to look that up, so.
We should also upload this with the meeting packet tonight so that the public can see what we're referencing.
So our total fiscal 26, the year that we're in right now, our discretionary spending was 2.85 million. For fiscal 27, it was proposed at $3,087,000, which was a $227,000 increase. Again, primarily in those 9 to 10 services, and all of the other line items combined, the other 600 line items was a total of 5,000, an increase.
And I'm sorry, Stephen, you said 2.8 for this fiscal year?
2.85.
2.85. And going forward, it was what,
3.087.
Thank you.
This is what's in the tentative. So some of these numbers have changed because
I understand.
of the changes in discretionary. A lot of what was cut was discretionary, so brought that number down quite a bit.
So scenarios 8A and 8B are new to this document since the last time we saw it. And why don't you talk us through this 8A and 8B, Stephen? And this was actually the genesis of 8A and 8B were really my thinking, how are we going to get all this work done? without the people who would be doing the work. And that's the building department head, that's the administrator, and that is also, we also talked about, but that's not affecting this budget, the general manager of the country club. That position isn't in these numbers, correct, Stephen?
Correct.
So, and some of the other positions that are proposed to be removed, not filled. So, really, I was wondering how can, you know, if everything just gets done under job titles, and I really wanted to consider a solution. So, I looked at the org chart and thought, well, maybe if we can fill these positions internally and create division leadership instead of having 15 department heads, we have 2 division leaders, and the department heads can report into the division leaders. That could save us a great deal of expense, and maybe we wouldn't have to worry about having a village administrator. So splitting the responsibilities of the village to 2 division leaders, one being executive office and what happens at a village hall, and the other being what happens in the community externally, in the field, in facilities, and parkland. So, and also considering potentially putting all the parkland under one division head. And so right now, the parkland is under the Public Works Department. So if the country club moves into Public Works, like all the other parks are, and parkland is, that we can have a division head that oversees all the inventory of the village, the physical inventory. So that was a solution that would help eliminate the need to hire someone new and bring in new benefits packages and healthcare and whatnot. And from there, you know, if we did do this internally, and if we filled positions internally that are available, like we did with the person who's handling the maintenance of the village center, then we'd save a lot of money. We'd save a lot of angst. We'd save the need for training and that kind of thing if it was an internal replacement, and could solve two issues with one swift decision. So that's a concept that brings the what is that? Can you talk through that one with Stephen, the numbers?
Yes, Mayor. That scenario with metered parking at $1.50 would bring the tax levy tax down $903,000, which would bring the tax levy increase to 13.94%, and the tax rate increase to 22.4%. That would be an average residential tax increase of $353 and $673 for commercial. Now, if meter parking was at $2 an hour, that would bring the total tax decrease to $1.18 million, which would bring the tax levy increase to 10% and the tax rate increase to 16.7%. The average residential tax increase would then be $262 for the year, and the average commercial tax increase would be $500 for the year.
So, Stephen, in the mayor's presentation of 8A and 8B, where you would have division heads, that would be currently, if everything stayed the same, an additional 5.5% on the tax rate to the residents of the community, if we went on to 8B. If we went on to 8A, it would be, in comparison to 7B, it would be an 11% increase on Percentage point, I apologize, percentage increase.
Well, when compared to 7B, yes, but there would be a reduction from the tentative budget of 16% on the tax levy would be, that's the decrease from the tentative, and a 25% decrease in the tax rate from the tentative budget.
Understood.
16 points, right? Percentage points.
Percentage points.
Under 8B, it would be 25%.
Yeah, I'm just
25
trying to
percentage points
Help
decrease.
people, I guess, 16 percentage points is more of a decrease than 16%. I'm not trying to be a snob.
No,
I'm just trying to make sure.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. And also, just to go back to a previous question, from the amendments that were approved at the last meeting, the discretionary decrease was 201,000. So we were proposing 227,000 increase in the tentative. That meeting cut 201,000 out of all discretionary spending. And the non-discretionary decrease was just about equal at 201,000.
Okay, but in scenario 8A and B, you have higher labor, but isn't the laborer already in there? Didn't you put the laborer back at 45,309?
Correct.
So-
But it's just because 7, it was just to present because 7's proposing cutting all of it. It was just a way to make sure that it wasn't a continuation of that. But yes, you're correct, Trustee Giuliano.
And remind us what the vacant positions are that are being proposed to be cut, not refilled?
So based off of, if we go back to the agreed amendments, it's a laborer for parks, an assistant rec manager for the village center and recreation, the village administrator, and the building department head, and GM
That's outside of the scope.
outside of the general
Mhm.
fund, but yeah.
But those are the 4 positions, and that was about, what, $625,000 in?
Rough, yes.
Okay. I always like to add to both, right? Because people like to know what we're getting rid of, what we're saying we're not gonna hire. But it's also pertinent to the community to say, we're saving $625,000 in salary and benefits. I think we gotta kinda get into that kind of vernacular when we're talking to the community.
So you can expect the services to be reduced as well.
Well, we haven't had a village administrator, we haven't had that laborer, we haven't had that department head, and we haven't had that assistant rec person, and services have not been reduced.
Yes, they
So-
have,
Well,
in your opinion.
and again, I have not heard the community saying services have been reduced.
You come spend the day in Village Hall, spend a week in Village Hall and see what people's frustrations
I
are.
would love to. Is that an invitation?
You're
That would be
right.
fantastic.
It's your right to
We'll
do
sit
that.
together, you and I, and we'll talk to the community.
Stephen, the assistant
I don't know why you have to be fresh.
assistant rec manager, how much are we talking
I
there?
mean, with the people who work here, with the people who work in DPW, who work in the building and planning department, and who struggle with the amount of services they're not able to provide and deadlines they're not able to meet. So your awareness of that is important.
Everyone, I'm sure that I'm aware of that, but I think what you're dismissing, and what it was dismissed through this entire budget process, was the resident and the taxpayer. By submitting a budget at 41% increase, I mean, say it correctly, tax rate increase, I mean, that's dismissive to the entire community that sent us here to be stewards of the budget. So, again, I have pretty good relationships with most of the workers in the community, so I feel comfortable with that. But let's move forward.
Is there a chance for public input into any of this process?
I think that would be great.
Yeah, we can add that to the agenda, right?
At the work session,
Why not?
Why not? It's a good idea.
it's a work session.
We've had
Well,
people
it's a
talk.
special work session, so.
and I think
Come on up, Ron.
It's important to hear from the community.
Before we do that, did you get an answer, Stephen? Were you, okay. How much are we talking
The total salary plus benefits is 103.
for the assistant rec?
Right, the starting union salary would be 51,426.
Thank you.
There you go, sir.
Hi, Ron Cohen. I'm close to 70 years which is hard to believe, a resident here in Port Jeff. And this isn't good enough? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Like my bar mitzvah. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, I happen to be a senior citizen, and I happen to be on fixed income. So the budget really came as a shock when I saw it on Facebook, which is the only way I really became aware of it. So I can't speak for everyone, but for me, that proposed increase was really extraordinary. So I really appreciate whatever people are doing to try to make it more affordable. I don't know if I would notice if the positions that you're proposing weren't filled, but I certainly would hope that you would do whatever you can to make it, like I said, as affordable as possible. And what I'm hearing here, I'm pleased to hear some of the discussion about not filling some of these positions. Like I said, for me, it's untenable, that kind of proposed increase.
How do you feel about elevating positions within the village to cover off on the responsibilities so we don't have to hire new people?
I don't know what that means in terms of budgetary responsibilities. I think anything you could do internally that doesn't increase the budget is great. I mean, even the fact that even Tara burgers have now gone up to $2 from $1 is just an amazing increase.
That's outrageous. Because there are a lot of
Yeah.
people on fixed income in this
Yes,
village.
I agree.
As we put this budget through, $3.
Also, I hear the $1.50 parking. The $2 I don't think is unreasonable. I would encourage you to at least even consider that. And I appreciate this opportunity to even come here and do this. I don't know much about the budgeting process. I'm learning. So I appreciate this opportunity. I think the more public input you allow or can be incorporated officially into this process would be great. So thank you for your time. And yeah, even if I know it's probably untenable how budgets are done, I know the school budget has a referendum. I guess that's untenable to do it this way in the village, but even if you could do something like that, that would be great. But at least having public input. I
We
think
did.
should be-
We had a public hearing in early April, but this is welcome as well.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, but okay. Actually, I may have been in Florida, so I think I just got back last week. So anyway, so thank you for allowing me to do this. So,
Thank you, Ron.
okay.
Hi, my name is Robert Grimm, 18 Pine Hill Road. I don't have anything negative or anything to say, just got a question for Stephen. Stephen, I don't understand that, which I don't think the trustees should be giving up their salary. You work very hard and you deserve your salary. But if they give up their salary and that money's taken out of the budget and they aren't elected next year, you tell me the new people aren't going to get paid?
Yes.
So do you really think you're going to get people to run, if you choose not to run, that are going to run if they're not going to get paid without it being their choice not to get paid? I mean, I just think that's something that needs to be considered. And I don't really think they should be giving up their salary. They work hard. I appreciate it to all of you that do everything you do. So, just my question.
come on down.
One other thing I just wanted to add, I had thought about before when you had talked about adding administrative staff, because I guess there's more responsibilities, is I'm willing to volunteer my time if you do need help with other administrative stuff here. I have the time and I have the expertise, so I'd be glad to also offer that. I'm sure there's people in the village who also might be willing to do that too.
What's your
so.
background? If you don't mind
Social
just
work,
asking.
also business administrative stuff. So, yeah, I have an MPA and I have a social work degree, so. And
You
I've
fit
got
right
time.
in, Ron.
Thank you. Okay. Anyway,
Thank you for offering that. Yes. Come on up. Just leave the chair there. Why do we keep moving that chair away?
First of all, thank all of you. I can't believe there's a lot of work that's going into this, a lot of consideration. So it is very appreciated. And I know that you guys are doing the very best that you can do to look at this budget and do what's right for the community. So I want to say that and thank you.
Thank you.
The one thing that I just keep thinking of as I hear this and I hear the work that's going into this is that there's a lot of similarities with the process for the school budget. And just as a reminder, the school budget, when they first presented to the community, they were almost at $1 million shortfall. That was their first draft. And what I think what everyone's getting hung up on is that first draft that was presented, which was a rough draft. I mean, it was a tentative budget, which was repeated many times. So again, with the school district came out with their first draft. It was almost $1 million. I think it was $896,000. They came back for their second revision. That was at about $596,000 or $600,000. And then they came back with their third presentation to the public, and they've now have a zero budget, a zero shortfall. But they have the luxury of having reserve funds, and they are taking from some of their reserve funds to make up some of that budget shortfall to get it to zero. And they also have an increase, a tax rate increase of 7%. So, you know, taking from what the school board does, I know it's a different voting process, but again, I think a lot of us are getting hung up on that first tentative budget, which was a tentative budget. And now we have to work together to get down to the one that's going to be adopted
So
next
is the
week.
school budget piercing the tax cap?
No, they're at 1.99.
And
However-
7% of their budget of $48 or $49 million is a lot more than,
It's at 50
gives you a lot
million.
more leeway.
It's
They're
at
lucky.
50 million,
Mhm.
and they've got their reserves, which they are using to help with that shortfall. So I'm no longer on the school board. You have school board members here, but I just wanted to give that for some perspective for folks for you guys who are.
So that's helpful. Charlene, can I ask you something? With regard the context of the tentative budget, because we're feeling a lot of criticism about putting out a tentative budget that was exorbitantly high. And we've been extremely interested, but keep getting scolded for not bringing in the trustees. But this is a process that we're going through right now, and there's no animosity or hesitation to include feedback from the trustees and sit down and work through this budget together. And it's not in hindsight, it's in, this is the way it works. This is the way it's working in New York State. New York State they keep passing budget extensions. They keep passing extensions because they can't agree on their budget. And we're going to agree on our budget on April 29th. And the reason I ask, what I'm asking for you to weigh in on here, I mean, the federal government hasn't passed a budget in how many years? Years.
Not
I know
accurate. I mean, the budgets, most of the government is funded right now. And
It's
most-
funded, but it's not, they keep
It's
extending.
Honestly, you're comparing apples, oranges, mangoes, and pineapples. Like, we should really focus on the village
I'm just asking
budget.
Charlene something.
Okay.
Because I'm Kyle. It's important that I say this for context, because I just feel like we're being attacked.
You
constantly.
You are, because the
I
budget
know
process
why.
was
I
flawed.
know why.
Why?
Because you felt like you didn't participate. But you are participating, so what I'm
Because we
asking
forced it
Charlene
upon you
about,
because there are no votes to pass the budget.
there's no hesitation. There's
Trustee
no
Hill,
hesitation.
may I remind you that if you go back and look at December's and January's meetings, Board of Trustee meetings, I, in every single one, talked about where we were in the budget cycle and encouraged everybody to get involved. So we worked through the whole thing, and, you know, and
Trustee Ugrinsky, I have to interrupt. This is, it's like I'm living in a fantasy land. So,
I
we voted,
concur.
pardon me, we voted on February 25th to exceed the tax cap. The treasurer and the commissioner of finance absolutely knew at that point, even though Trustee Ugrinsky said she didn't have the aggregate nut totals, they knew we were going to exceed the tax cap. Now, again, the mayor claims she couldn't connect the dots. Now, I'm assuming because she's a data person and she likes to find the delta, that she, I'm not going to say that she knew, but I would bet money that she probably knew that we were going to exceed the tax cap. So we were misled at that vote because Trustee Hill specifically asked the treasurer, are we going to exceed the tax cap? And Trustee Ugrinsky interrupted and said, we don't have the aggregate numbers, but we're going to work hard to stay underneath the tax cap. We went over the tax cap by 39%. So now we come to the very next meeting. This is why I'm saying, can we please deal in reality? So now we come to the very next meeting, and I asked the treasurer specifically, did you know when we made that vote that we were going to exceed the tax cap? And he was told by the mayor, answer yes or no, and his answer was yes. We have all these work sessions. Trustee Ugrinsky is correct. She goes around the periphery of it, had never once said, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to exceed we are going to go over the tax cap significantly, and they knew. They had those numbers back in December and January. So let's stop being disingenuous about the process here. The process was misleading and was hiding the football. We came in and are now saying, well, that's it. Since you were dishonest, and you were, now we're going to fix this process. And that's where we are today. So let's get back to the work of the people. We're at 7B. Let's see how we can chop this budget down more. And that's it, because I have to say, you would be upset if you were misled into believing when you make a vote. We made a vote to cut the parking meters. They knew we were going to exceed the tax cap. We made a vote to exceed the tax cap. They knew we were going to exceed the tax cap and never divulged any of that information. So it's this.
Stephen, what was the percentage of the non-discretionary increases? And how, because that was the only thing that I would say that you knew at the time was going to impact this budget, was the non-discretionary increases. Am I wrong when I say that?
Yes, because no decision had been made final on discretionary or anything else.
Non-discretionary, I'm
The
talking
non-discretionary-
about. The employee benefits and salary
Those
increases.
percentages, I knew what those percentages were.
And
gonna-
what of the total budget would that have been in terms of percentage increase? Just that alone?
13%?
So,
But, no, but
so
you
Steve-
would have known that too.
So Stephen,
You
add
should have
all
known,
of,
you
We didn't
voted
know what
on
the
that
offsets would
collective
be
bargaining
to that.
agreement.
Stephen.
But we asked you, do we anticipate going over the tax cap?
And
Their
what- so
answer
what was your- what
the
was your
back
answer?
in February, when we were considering that resolution, was we're doing everything we can to balance the budget to remain under the 2% tax
There's
cap.
no
You're now saying
disagreement.
we all should have known that
There's
was
no
impossible.
disagreement that the answer should have been yes. I agree that the answer should have been yes. We will, because we have 13% non-discretionary dollars. So I don't know why the treasurer didn't answer that question. Maybe, did you have that answer that day?
If everything was left as it was when the tentative budget was stamped in, then yes, that would have been the definitive. But before the tentative budget is stamped in, their decisions could have been made to completely strip the budget
I'm
and
just
services.
talking about non-discretionary. That's all I'm talking
You got to
about.
pay that no matter what. But Stephen, I have a question. did Trustee Ugrinsky, when she gives her report at our work session, or you, when you give your report at the work session, ever state to us, we are right now at a 13% over the tax cap at any of those work sessions? Did you guys let us know?
I believe I didn't know what those final numbers were, because in December, I didn't even know what the increase for the medical was at
In
that
January, February?
January, I started having a better idea of
Yeah,
what everything was.
So there was you guys had an idea. What I have to say is the frustrating part, and I think that's why we need to put procedures in place that prevent this going forward, is that hiding the football or leaving this information out so that we vote on a resolution to surpass the tax cap, because that's what this came down to. I'm pretty sure my vote would have been no. Because I was told, and Trustee Ugrinsky said, it's just a preliminary, it's just procedural, we just got to be careful. And truthfully, I believe both of you knew that we were going way over the tax cap with
So
the
what would have
tentative budget.
happened if there was a vote not to pierce the tax cap? And I'm asking this question because I don't know the answer, but
Then you would have illegally pierced the tax cap if you had to. or
because
you
it
would have
was
had to shrink the budget.
non-discretionary.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you would have to lay people off.
Well, let's just assume that Trustee Franco is correct, and we could look at the budget cycle as it occurs and maybe get to where we were a lot earlier, right? To me, maybe we start the budget cycle then in November, right? And then that addresses that whole situation. Understood. It's,
State gives us the increase in health insurance sometime in December.
right.
As far as, the way the process works under state law is the treasurer sends out a notice to the department heads asking for estimates. The treasurer prepares revenue estimates based upon history, based upon knowledge, based upon what happens. There are deadlines in state village finance law that mandate how the budget is and when the budget is supposed to be submitted. Those, I think January is when your letter goes to the department heads. I think the department heads have until the end of February to send their estimates in. So during that time, many municipalities, and I suppose, have you passed this every year, the tax cap? So many municipalities, as a stopgap, because of the timing involved in, adopting a local law to exceed the tax cap, do it as a precautionary measure. Obviously, that's what happens here. I can tell you that Stephen did not know in January exactly what the number was. He probably knew that it wasn't looking good, but he wanted to wait until the final numbers came in. Then what happens, March 20th, the executive budget prepared by the mayor and the treasurer are stamped in. And then, in a lot of scenarios, that's the first start. That's the starting point for the budget. Then the Board of Trustees have the ability to make any changes to the budget. The budget becomes the preliminary budget, and that's the budget for which the public hearing is held. And that budget goes through the evolution of different changes. There's information that comes up. And then by May 1st, that budget has to either be legally moved by resolution to be adopted as amended or anything else, or the tentative budget by operation of law becomes the budget. So that's basically the law of how a village budget is started and how it's finished and how it's created.
Okay, I think we all know that.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm pretty
I'm
sure, but
sorry.
thank you. But I say thank you so much for explaining it again to the community. The part that you're glassing over, and I shouldn't say that, I apologize, but the part that is missing from that description is that this board was misled on that resolution when they knew, the Commissioner of Finance knew, the increase was, and the mayor asked a very prudent question. She asked the treasurer, how much would the increase be at the 2% tax cap? And I believe Stephen said, accurately, about $163,000, $164,000.
Yes.
At that point, we knew, we didn't know, they knew we were exceeding the tax cap. That information should certainly have been divulged, and Trustee Ugrinsky, who is the Commissioner of Finance, should have notified us in multiple work sessions and before we took that vote. So I understand the process The problem is the process was muddied by the misleading of the board.
Listen, I want to address that, right? Because, it is easy for you guys, and I'll refer to what Trustee Hill said in a prior meeting. Well, it's simple. It's like 3 numbers that you have to figure out. If it were that simple, that would be lovely. It's not. So, at the time that we knew that there were going to be non-discretionary increases that would pressure the cap, we did not yet know where we stood on the discretionary items and all of the departmental expenses.
I have to address this because you're honestly putting words in my mouth. The point that I made was, and I think the context was, you didn't have the aggregate number on the budget. And my point was, you wouldn't have needed the aggregate amount on the budget. You only needed a very few data points. One of them would have been contractual raises. One of them would have been medical, which we got in January. One of them would have been all the other positions that we're choosing to add to it alone would have been exceeding the tax cap. So
But we didn't know whether we were going to be filling those, not filling those, like that. Those discussions had not yet even happened.
But either way,
And I think
we were all blindsided by the tentative budget. And that's why we're grumpy about it still.
okay, you can be grumpy. So,
That's what we're trying to do. Yeah, yes, agree.
Very special meeting. Got a little awkward. I'm like, I'm going to sit down. Mike Weaver, 116 Wilson. Question, because we don't have a copy of this, so we're listening to everything. Out of all 8 scenarios, what's the, and you don't need to tell me which scenario, what's the lowest tax number out of the 8 scenarios?
70.
No, what's the actual number?
175, $175 increase.
What's the tax rate?
The tax rate is
The levy and the tax rate.
The levy is 6.17, and the tax rate is 11.14.
Okay, and the highest of all 8 scenarios is?
27 and 17.
Yeah, that's ugly. Forget that.
Yeah.
So, based off what you said at the beginning, I just want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly. Even at the 6.17,
Mhm.
over the next 4 years, we're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 23%. Because if you're saying 5.5% over the next 3 years plus a 6.17, we're looking at somewhere between 22 and 23% tax increase that's going to come about no matter what over the next 4 years is the best case scenario.
Thank you, Lipa.
Ballpark, I
mean-
mean, again, depending on how, this year's number will obviously
That-
affect the next year's.
That number that I gave was not the tax rate. It was the tax
levy.
The tax levy.
Okay,
I had
Sure.
part of the discussion when we had the intern for the Treasury Department was that we would be doing analysis to try and get to a point where we could project to the future, and that's
So the
that's
fo-
what we were projecting.
so the lowest levy this year would be 6.17, and then the levies were approximated at 5.5, approximate.
Yes.
So we're approximating somewhere in the neighborhood of 22% over the next 4 years.
Yes.
Well, probably be more than that because it's compounded.
Yeah, I didn't want to say
You
that,
know.
but yeah. Well, because again, depending on your number this year, your percentage changes next year.
Right.
That's fine. And I'll just address briefly, it is apples and oranges when you're comparing the school and the village. However, I will also point out, I'm the chair of finance for the school board, our committee. What I will say is we work philosophically differently than you guys. We start at our tax cap number with, as was brought up, with a deficit, and then we work the opposite way. We don't have the freedom to simply vote to pierce the cap in our situation. So we work philosophically differently, and then we go from that way and work backwards to get to our number where it is. Okay, so for us, it is very different. So that's why, every time it gets brought up, I'm like, can't compare the two. But the process we go through does start dramatically earlier than the process here. Once we get our ERS numbers, and the comptroller puts those out in September of the year before, we get the comptroller's numbers for the ERS contribution, then we start working from there in November and December and go from there. All right, and that's, unfortunately, right now, it seems like even at the best case scenario, we're looking at a very difficult 4 years. So I bring that up only because it came up before. I'm not saying it's exactly what the village should do, but we can't go and just say we're gonna pierce the cap. We would have to get a 60% voting referendum when our budget vote comes up. Okay? Thank you.
Procedurally, I would say, thank you, that Charlene just explained the pieces, like you get the data that drives the budget much earlier than we get the New York State data.
Well, most of ours is driven the same way yours is, by contractual, by utility, by all these same
Sure.
approximations that you guys make. There's really not a lot of differences in what we get versus you guys. We get our health contribution numbers at the same time as you guys. ERS, we have TRS and ours. You guys have, ERS and your retirement numbers. Those all come out from the state at the same time. We get the exact same info at the same time. You might have different variables based off you were negotiating contracts this year, so those numbers were changing in advance, but for the most part, we do get a lot of the same, anything from the state, we kind of get at the same time.
And I would argue that we also are essentially following the same process philosophically that you do, because we came in with a deficit, essentially, right? And have been sitting here in work sessions systematically whittling them down.
Well,
And that's
yeah.
what we're doing
I
here
mean,
tonight.
Yes and no, but we can't, we don't have the ability that you guys have. We can't turn around and say, we're just gonna unilaterally go over the cap because we're publicly held accountable by a budget vote every year. We don't have that freedom to say, well, we'll stamp it in this way and go from there. Our earliest proposal that comes out in January, we start at our cap number, and we have obviously money that we have to cut in order to get to that cap number. We don't have that the same. It's just two different things. That's why I say it's like apples and oranges. So every time the school budget comes up, I'm like, well, let's not bring that up because it's not the same thing. And I brought that up in the last meeting too. Thank you, guys.
And I think we did talk about, changing the timing as much as we can, given all the assumptions that we have to make.
And we don't have any
going into
reserves
the
to work
tentatives.
with either, so
Yeah.
that's the other.
Well, they,
difference.
just to give you, because I attended the budget presentation from the school district, they have 5 retirees. They're not bringing them all back. They're condensing they're condensing those hires. So, they're looking at their model saying, hey, listen, we need to squeeze the budget a little bit because we want to stay under the tax cap. We seem to take the opposite approach. Hey, we're going to go over the tax cap, we might as well go over as far as we can go. So I think that's a good model for us to follow. We shouldn't be hiring when we have declining revenue, and it just, again, I don't want to be redundant. Let's move back on. Let's move on.
Charlene, in your experience, have villages ever offered retirement incentives?
Yes, they have. Sometimes the state will offer one, and that helps out. There has not been one since 2010, mostly because the state's having a problem hiring people as well. So they're afraid of the attrition. But definitely, I have seen local governments offer an incentive where, for example, they will pay for the retiree health coverage for 18 months, so there's no contribution. If someone were to retire and they put a time frame in, if you retire before a certain age, for a certain date, the village will pick up your your contribution to retiree benefits for 18 months or something along those lines, or offer dental coverage for the first 3 years, at no cost. So there are some incentives. There's also an incentive as a percentage of salary you could offer, just as a bonus to retire. So there are retirement incentives as well that you could offer. You have to speak to your labor council.
Stephen, can I just ask one question? And it's really to inform the community. So you're saying over the next 5 years, potentially, we are going to have a 5.5% on average tax levy.
It's a rough projection.
Rough
So there's
projection.
nothing set in stone. But
I
because
got
the union contract doesn't even go beyond that point. It was an exercise to try and come up with
Understood.
what this board
Yeah.
had told me and the mayor had asked is to come up with a plan, a
Two
3-year.
main drivers,
yes.
right? So we know what the LIPA reduction is going to be over the next couple of years, and we also can just add a CPI, right, to that. And that's,
Yeah, there's
you know,
there's percentages.
and
You-
looking
health
at
insurance,
expense
10%,
trends,
you know.
Of course, but
That's
I think
what-
the
those are
community
the
gets
assumptions
confused
we
when we
made.
say tax levy and tax rate increase. So if
Is
it
it,
was
is
on
it
average,
levy or levy?
I'm gonna say levy because that's what I like. So, but thanks for the correction. I live with an English teacher, so I get that quite often. So the tax rate increase relatively would be around 10% a year if the 5.5% levy was in place.
Depends on the assessment.
Understood. I'm
So
just
if the
saying.
assessment goes up, it will mitigate that. And also if the glide path as it slows down will mitigate that exponential growth as well. So
and for example, if both of the hospitals that are occupying a rather large swath of land in our 3 square miles, if they decide to take additional properties off the tax rolls by making them medical properties, that shifts that amount on the residents, right? And that is a trend that's also increasing.
LIPA is on the is put back on the residents in the commercial district, and so is sewage treatment plant. I mean, everybody who lives here pays a lot when there are 2, 3 huge occupants of property that pay nothing. 4, 5. Count all the churches, count all the schools, count everything. I mean, the residents are footing the bill, and the commercial businesses, the landlords are footing the bill for a lot of use of our roads and our highways, our everything. So
And that's
it's
yeah.
a fact. It's just a fact.
Here's another thing that has hurt us over the last 10 years. For all of the apartment buildings that have gone up, they've gotten significant IDAs without us getting, I think our longest one is at this point, goes through 2050, right? So what I've done is started meeting with the CEO of IDA.gov to help her understand the Brookhaven IDA, to help her understand what the impact is to our little village every time they give a developer an IDA and, essentially are taking tax revenue away from the residents here. So, so we're trying to tighten those lines of communication because they were very surprised to know that we hadn't had a voice in those conversations as developers are asking for IDAs. And so that, hopefully that'll protect us with the upcoming development that's happening. I think the Maryhaven property, that builder has committed to not taking an IDA, right? In order to bring that back onto the tax rolls.
They're not. That's not a rental. That's a tax.
Right, but I mean,
They don't-
he's
they wouldn't
committed to paying taxes.
Right.
Essentially.
Well,
Yeah.
they're not eligible.
Yeah.
That's why.
Right, but we
So
do need
Dawn
to
and Folio.
discuss. So we do need to discuss the rental buildings that are going up.
2 last questions. One is I hear about the parking, 152. It used to be 3. I'm just curious, was there some study that if it stayed at 3, you would reduce a lot of revenue that comes into the village from the parking that's anticipated?
There was a big. We got a lot of negative feedback about that rate because the employees who work in the village can't afford that, $12, $15 a day to go to work. And that was the advocacy that we were hearing from the business owners. They can't get employees because employees don't want to pay for parking. And walking, actually, to Trustee Franco's observation, the town parking lot has always been, there's always been an awareness that the town parking lot is there and it can be an alternative for employee parking. However, leaving at 2 o'clock in the morning from your job and walking all the way to the Brookhaven Town parking lot has presented danger, concerns about safety and security in the village, and we did get a lot of complaints about that as well prior to your joining the board. So, but it's obviously it's an answer, and people do park in the Brookhaven town lot. They find parking wherever they can, so they don't have to pay, or they can pay less. But we have another contingency in this village, a tax-paying contingency, and that is the commercial district. Their tax rates are increasing too by a decrease in parking. So it's offset. When the parking rate goes down, when the parking rate goes down, their commercial rate goes up. So they're trading off as well in some way, shape, or form. It's on a smaller scale to the commercial district than it is to the residents. There's less commercial storefronts and taxable parcels than there are residential. But that's part of the conversation we had to have with them. And I think it's understood. They're not happy that the rate's going to go up for metered parking in some way, shape, or form. But the $3 is really punishing on the employees.
Is there some way of making an employee exemption, or?
That's about, how many employees park? Like 300 people work in the village. Maybe 300 to 600 people work in the village at any given season during during the high season. So that's employee exemption would do two things. It would decrease completely your revenue from those 600 parkers, and it would take up parking for people who wanted to shop here and eat here and come here to visit. So, but good questions. I don't know if those answers are, if they help at all, but those are the facts that go into that's what goes into the decision-making process.
Thanks, Laurie.
One piece of analysis that we did do as part of the parking rate, when we went through the last 5 years, Stephen, can you just talk about some of the price sensitivity analysis that we did over the 5-year period, right? With it going from $1 to...
From the placer?
No, not from Placer, from the rate analysis that we did.
The transaction numbers, I think, is what you're looking for.
Well, it's, again, can't compare apples to oranges because we changed the timing and we changed when we were starting and...
But I think the what I was looking to uncover in that question was when we did the analysis, we found that from a traffic perspective, there was very little variability, so no price sensitivity, no matter where it was, when it was $1, whether it was $3, right? We still had the same amount of people parking. Maybe the durations changed, but those parking lots were always full.
Actually, and what we actually saw was that there was an increase in the total number of people in the village of Port Jefferson from 2022 to 23 to 24, 25. The numbers of people kept going up.
Regardless
and we
of
also
price.
saw last year in the placer data that during the week we saw the biggest decrease in parking transactions on the Monday to Thursday, and an increase in transactions on the Friday to Sunday for the last parking season. So there were the same amount of people, if not more, but it was during the week when parking, that's when we saw the decreases in transactions, for the most part.
And once again, it becomes a timing issue, right? Because historically, the bid has made a request to change the parking rate in, like a November timeframe. So by going from $3 to $1.50 this year, we literally impacted this year's budget negatively by $90,000 just by doing that. So what I've asked the bid to do is, if there are desired changes to the parking rates, let's make that part of the budget conversation so that, we're not changing the budget in the middle of the year because they want to change parking rates, right? So just a timing shift should solve that.
I'm just curious, under any of your scenarios, if you kept it at 3, what that would make a difference? Or that didn't come up in any of the budget scenarios at all?
That was not part of the discussion.
Okay.
How would that alter the budget
Right.
if we put it back to $3 rather than to just
On the weekend.
on the, just to get the numbers, what would that be?
Just
For
For
I
Friday,
think one
Saturday,
thing we haven't
Sunday.
mentioned, just for the discussion's sake, the prior rate before we changed it in March was $1 during the week, $3 on the weekends. Now, what we have in these scenarios is $1.50 and $2 at all hours. I just think
Right.
that was getting,
Right.
we were talking
Right,
over
but
that.
we
Yes.
also
Yes.
increased the time that the meters are on.
yes.
Right.
Right.
But in terms of the, like, comparing the revenue, the people, it's just important to point out there was a peak rate for the weekends.
Yeah, it's a rate volume analysis, right? Rather than just a one number versus another number.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's.
Yeah. What is the revenue?
So what? Yeah. What? Can you please repeat the question?
If we increased it to $3, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, how much additional revenue would that bring in? And how would that affect the tax levy and the tax rate increase on 7B?
What would the rate be during the week?
2.
I have to do. Let me.
Take
Let's
a few
circle back.
minutes. Yeah,
Let's
we'll
circle
come
back
Go ahead, take a
because I
few
have.
minutes on that. Do you have anything else, Ron?
Yeah. Stephen, your name? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You had mentioned something, I think, about a capital outlay that happened in 2014. I may not have the exact dates correct. That's affected our current budgeting difficulty. Do you know what that capital outlay was for?
It was for a number of projects. Too many to just rattle off, but it was for just Station Street, the Emergency Command Center, the Bluff Project,
The Barnum lot.
the Barnum lot, a variety of very high-ticket capital projects that were, the budgets were blown on them by by $1.13 million without having the funding in place or or a revenue source in place for it.
And I just thought one other question. The leaf pickup program, how much does that cost in terms of resident? Because I'm willing as a resident to pay for my own leaves being removed. In fact, I do that anyway. So I'm just curious how much of that costs the village.
The last 2 years, we've averaged $160,000 a year.
Okay.
Did we eliminate that in any of these scenarios?
No.
Oh. Well, I heard a resident stand up in the budget hearing saying, "Why don't we just experiment for this year, and see how it goes?" I mean, if we took 160 or 130, did you amend it? Did you change the amount in the budget? Did you change
Yes.
in the
It went up.
discretionary?
Yes. That was part of the discretionary increase of 30,000. That was 30,000, but yeah.
You kept it
yes.
there. So if you take that out of A and B, 8A and 8B, or 7A and 7B,
The-
7A and 7B to me are like, I don't even know how we can, there are positions, I mean, that laborer is needed in this village, that parks laborer is needed. And yes, they're doing the job, but they complained to us last year about not having enough staff on parks, on the parks staff. And because they're just
So
overwhelmed.
160,000 would
But in
represent
the tentative
about
budget wasn't, sorry, just on the point on the parks labor, in the tentative budget, weren't we getting rid of the parks laborer and having the deputy superintendent in the
Yes.
proposed budget? So we're working from a place of not having that position, starting from the proposed budget.
Well, if we're not paying or hiring an assistant, that's a non-starter, right? For this budget, unless it's an internal move, that laborer position should not be in my opinion, eliminated, because they're the ones who do the work.
But we were eliminating that position to take, we weren't gonna fill that position, we were gonna take that money and hire an assistant DPW chief, right? To oversee 26 employees with 5 leads. It was an excessive, it was just budgetary irresponsibility. But if you're saying, it seems like you're talking on both sides.
What job did you
Allow
think
me to
that
finish.
person was gonna be doing?
Allow me to finish. So now you have a situation where you're
They
saying,
all work.
we need this employee, and then now we don't need this employee. So I'm not sure which one, the assistant DPW was gonna be a parks laborer?
All the people who work in parks and public works actually work.
No one is, I think, even in the universe of suggesting that. The point that I'm making is there was a decision from the administration to say that the parks
But let's
position
move
was
forward.
well, but that's related to what we're discussing, was that it was dispensable because we were going to trade it out for this different position. We agreed generally as a board
That was
we
the
don't want
request
that
of the
additional
department head.
position.
That was at the
However-
request of the department head.
Okay, but however, based on your proposed budget, that position is dispensable because you dispensed of it.
I disagree. It was at the request, was that
Is
at
the-
the request of the
Well,
department head?
I can relay what my conversation with the DPW superintendent was this. I don't need to hire the laborer if I get the assistant DPW superintendent. If I don't have it, because I still need a body. So the hope was that he would get the body and be able to filter the work per his conversation with me building the budget.
Trying to be
And I think that's what he
cognizant
said
of
here at the
of the
special work session
expense.
too.
It was to be cognizant of the expense.
So he said he would
expenditure.
defer that hiring for a year if he could, to still have the laborer but not do the assistant DPW superintendent. I believe that's what he said at the special work session we had on the 7th.
So if we take 160 out of 8A and 8B, what are we looking at?
So that would represent about another that's about 3% on the tax rate. So that would lower the tax rate a further 3%.
Is there anyone attending this meeting right now in this room that would hate to see the leave program leave for a year? Yes, Barbara.
Barbara Sabatino. We tried that years ago, probably decades ago, right?
Yep.
And it lasted 1 year.
It lasted 1 week.
1 week? Huh. Okay. It did not go over well.
It didn't go over well. It lasted 1 week. The
Mhm.
board decided, because enough people
Right.
objected to it, that, okay, no, we're putting it back in.
Okay, so let me just state, this past fall, I raked all my leaves. I brought them all down to the front, and it took a month for the, highway to come get them, where they should, I had them down there the week prior. But there were a few storms and all
Yeah.
that, so I totally understand that. The year before, I hired somebody just to rake them to the front of the house, not take them away. That was $450. If I asked the guy to take them away, which I didn't, I think it would have been anywhere from $500 to $600 to do that. You had mentioned at the last meeting I attended that Maggio will take some leaves. And I had, okay, sorry. I called them because years ago, and let me try to state this correctly, Maggio will not take leaf waste in one of those paper bags that are environmental. They'll take it in a plastic bag. The highway department won't take a plastic bag, they take the paper. Now, Maggio will only take, at tops, 5 bags at a time. That'll take an awful lot of pickups at once a week to remove all those leaves. All right, so I've been biting my tongue over there, so let me just say, this lovely gentleman who's been in the village almost 70 years. I'm 73 and a half that I've been here, does not pay parking meters, okay? I used to own a store, and when I hear that, I'm just like, 150, I think, will be great. I think charging employees a monthly fee to hang the tag for people who don't live here might be a solution. Many years ago, so many years ago, I can't remember who mumbled it, saying Port Jeff residents should be paying for their own parking and not getting free parking. So we can do a little analogy where Port Jeff residents start paying for their parking will go over just as well as the LEAF program was taken away. All right. Not hiring people to fill the vacant jobs, I think, is the way to go. With the interns that have come in, they have been so helpful. And talking to the people in planning, they said that the young lady who's now the intern in planning, she's getting so much done that I think for this year can kind of.
So the
so-
CSEA will
Uh-huh.
not like to hear that.
Okay.
They are very concerned about interns. I mean, we have a limit to how many interns we can hire in a semester, and also how there's another limit. How many that can be hired, and they can't fill a position. They can't fill an empty position.
Right, plus the one we have in planning will be leaving soon, so she's very short-term, but terrific at what she does.
Yeah.
And so is everybody in planning and building.
In fact, can I relay an anecdote to you?
Yes.
So they went to the Planning Federation meeting
Mhm.
at the good grace that this board had to approve that expense. And they came back, I don't know if they reported this to you, but I got a report from Dan, and they learned a ton about SECRA, about all kinds of things, about helping to guide the meetings and staff reports and all kinds of things that they've been spending so much time on, how to scale back on those things, which means overtime, right? And so it definitely will go into saving overtime for our planning department, the fact that they went to this. And they identified the New York Smart Growth Community Planning Grant, which is, it's making $2 million available statewide, can fund up to 90% of eligible project costs. We have to get into our comprehensive plan. This grant can cover comprehensive plan development, and also it can cover zoning updates. So, and we're doing a
Wonderful.
lot of those right now. That we have the building and planning department working on zoning changes for the zoning code. So, ideal to have, and we can bring in a consultant to do that work with this grant funding.
And the comprehensive plan really does need to be tweaked because it's discouraging development rather than encouraging development. Before I forget, because I'm at that age now, the entities in the village that pay no taxes at all, okay, the hospitals, and pretty soon, hopefully, the Mary Haven property will
Be on the
go
tax roll.
Yeah,
It will.
be on the tax
Mhm.
roll. We had talked about the bid district tax, and Mather is in the bid district, but because the pay no tax and the bid district tax is based on what what everybody pays to the village, they were at zero contribution to the bid district. And I wonder if there's a way to get the non-taxable entities that are in the bid district to have just like a one little contribution rather than a tax which, it's not based on. I'm rattling off now, but.
So the bid taxes that are collected,
Mhm.
they are part of the tax cap. So even if we go up with bid taxes, that will increase resident taxes to offset. It has to, one goes up,
I-
the other goes down.
Right,
You
but
know
the
what I mean?
bid district is based on the tax that the commercial property pays.
Bid, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
So I'm kind of hoping that somebody smarter than me will figure out how these non-taxed entities, Mather, St. Charles, whoever, would somehow make a contribution, because you're right, we're paying for the roads, we're paying, the Mather walkathon is coming up, and we pay for the security, we pay for the road closing, on and on and on.
We provide the services.
We provide the services
Mhm.
that perhaps they will contribute to the services.
Yeah, Mather has stepped up in a number of ways and contributed to the Conservancy so that we could reinvest those funds into offset taxpayer expenses, into our village center, to the events that are put on, farmers markets, stuff like that. So they are contributing, 10,000 for farmers market. They're helping to offset. They're supporting the historical society. They're contributing back to the community. I don't know that it means that they're contributing what they would normally, like, what would their assessment be if that was a regular property? Like LIPA,
Yeah.
Ask.
Oh, and thank you. That's another thing I
all of
wanted
the
to.
hospitals, so.
So, LIPA made their plea for the tax reduction because they weren't really using it in property values at the time that they made that plea was going down. Now property values are coming back up again. We can't do anything because Brookhaven has to be the taxing entity that would say to LIPA, yeah, property taxes are going, property values are going back up again. Maybe we should re-examine what you pay
It's determined by the state.
by the state.
It's not
Okay.
the town.
Okay.
The state determines what their,
Well,
what their assessment is.
Putting that little thing in the back of somebody's head who happens to be listening, Governor Hochul.
I was actually speaking to County Supervisor Ed Romaine on that topic
Oh, okay.
also. So there are, and as you know, we have a power plant working group, right, which has started building, not started. I mean, we've developed relationships with all of the stakeholders that touch the power plant. Most recently, LIPA has finally come to the table. What the glide path is, and it probably bears mentioning, is that LIPA originally sued town of Huntington, town of Brookhaven,
Northport.
and the village of Port Jefferson, and I think those are the three, stating that they had been overassessed for a number of years, and so the settlement and the reason for the glide path is that instead of having to pay them $93 million, this agreement was reached so it wouldn't decimate those, the two towns and the village that were part of that settlement. So that's what we're dealing with now. The where we are now is we are about to go into the extension, the 5-year extension. But there are a lot of things that are happening with battery energy storage, with hydrogen pilot, the one that's going on in Northport, which ostensibly would be targeted for production here in Port Jeff. When there's a change of use on that property, anything that gets done there, that would be the trigger that would allow us to reassess.
Yes.
We can't,
Okay.
we can't do it without that.
Right.
All right. Well, with every good comes a bad, so we have to be careful on the batteries, and things like that. But we have a good group looking into it, so I have great confidence in them. Let me just make one more statement before I go back into the audience, which is I really don't want to see anybody here give up their compensation because you work extremely hard and for very long, a lot of hours, as we can see right now. So if that could be avoided, I would really like to see that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Barbara. Doesn't sound like it's going anywhere, Rob.
I just want to point out that the one thing we all know is that one of the purpose of Village is because when you share stuff collectively, it's a lot more beneficial and
Mhm.
cheaper, okay? So if I have to pay $600 to have my leaves picked up now, because we're going to save the money, the tax money for everybody, that means that, is my taxes going to go down $600?
No,
No, they're not.
it's,
So
no.
that's one of the
That
reasons
would be your
why
tax
we need
increase
these type of
altogether,
things.
right? That would have been, if the
Right.
tentative budget
So
was
if
stamped
we-
in, that
if
would have
we-
been a tax
If
increase.
we're losing more and more village benefits, it gets to the point of, do we need a village? And we can't keep losing stuff. I know people won't agree, but a lot of people like me believe that we've lost everything with the country club. There's nothing there for regular people anymore. We've lost some parking lots that are only for residents. Now we were talking
Which
about
parking
losing the
lots?
leads. The one by Revo's, that was at one time, that was residents' parking lot, big part of it. Yeah, just about a year or two ago it was.
We didn't change that.
And it was changed now, it's a public one, and the one by the train station, behind the train station there. I used to park there all the time in the spots, and that was taken away from us. So it seems like we're losing more and more, and taxes are going up and up and up. And that's just my point. Mainly it's the LEAP program, is what I'm saying.
Mhm.
That's the reason that we want a village, because we get those things, and it saves us a lot of money. And I couldn't pick up all my leaves if I had to put them in the trash. I pick up leaves from when they start coming down, and I put them out in the garbage. I rent an extra pail. And I still have, my entire front is filled with leaves, and I keep it against the fence so it doesn't cause problems. And maybe we need to educate for people to keep them further back. And then this way, we won't have the problems we're having. Just my thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, you had asked about the hospital. Like St. Charles assessment is 1.14 million, which if they were paying village taxes would be $465,000 in taxes.
Okay.
Barbara, just to address Maggio's, they will, when I spoke to them, on bulk pickup days, they will take 1 or 2 extra pails during the season. So the bags, they're not going to, but if you have an extra pail and you just want to throw the leaves in a pail, they'll take them. That's why we were kind of bouncing around like an idea of like community involvement. Let's, because dumping is very expensive. If we started we're already paying Maggio. So on the bulk days, let's fill up our pails and take as much as we can, get rid of as much as we can to kind of just save on.
I do that now,
Yeah, me too.
and I will get the guy, and he'll take a couple of extra bags.
I hit him good for Christmas.
But there are more leaves that outpace everybody's ability to get into bags.
Agreed. Agreed.
All right. Any more conversation about
I
what
don't
we're
know.
looking at?
Have we accomplished anything? I don't.
Stephen, were you able to generate that number if the meters on Friday, Saturday, Sunday went to $3 and $2 during the week? Okay, no worries.
All right, so I guess Stephen's gonna go back, sharpen the pencil, work on the document. Mhm.
It might be easy to come up with an acceptable amount that the board would think for a rate increase or a dollar amount increase that might be able to help Stephen go back and take another pass through. If everybody wants to be in a certain range between, I see the lowest scenario here is $175 increase for average residential taxpayer. So if somebody, if the board were maybe to come to a consensus as to where that percentage would be, or what that amount would be, that would be an acceptable amount for the budget, and have Stephen maybe come, he and I can bounce some ideas off each other and come up with some further adjustments for the board, if that's something that seems to be workable.
I'm curious about this number first and then
Okay.
see where we are.
It'd be another, for the weekends, it'd be a semi-aggressive estimate of about 250,000.
How would that affect the tax rate in 7B?
Well, 200.
This is
some
$2
numbers,
during the week,
yeah.
$3 on the weekend.
Yes. Yeah.
It would reduce the tax rate of about 6% further.
So we take it down to
So
about 6%?
it would take it down another $90.
All right, let me ask another question.
To the average residential.
If every dollar that we lower of the tax rate, what does that mean in spending? Or,
Well, that's what we're cutting. Those are all.
right, so
It's either we're adding a revenue or we're cutting spending. So
right, so if we lower it, for every dollar, what's the savings?
Well, you said 250 was a $90.
yeah, 250,000 represents about $90.
Just divide it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
What it is per
No, okay, I can figure, yeah, thank you.
Less 0.03 cents
No.
for every dollar. No, unless I'm doing my math wrong. Or excuse me, for every $2,777 we cut, it's $1 decrease.
2,000?
Sorry, I was doing the math in reverse.
Yeah.
My apologies. It's like
One more time, it was 2,000.
so basically,
$2,777.
$2,800 is about $1. Every $2,800 we cut is about $1 off of the average residential tax.
Right,
Got it.
thank you.
So just to sort of summarize what we just did in a hypothetical 7C, right? If we went to $2 during the week and $3 on the weekend, it looks like that would effectively drop the dollar increase to the average resident below $100, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90 bucks.
Who's going to do all the HR stuff? Who's going to do the insurance stuff? Who's going to do it? Who's going to talk to the insurance company that handles our trip and slip and falls and stuff like that? Who do you think, Bob?
Mayor, can I ask a question? What,
I'm asking a question right
Who's
now.
doing it now?
The clerk is working out of title.
And the clerk's gonna continue to work out a title. That's, I don't know what other answer there would be.
so for 3 years, the clerk's worked out a title, and this is and she's done those roles that you've asked, that you've just mentioned. So, clearly, we need to continue on that path until we get a little more financial solvency here. So I
There's
think,
no financial solvency in the future, Matt. You see that. You see it with a 5% levy increase over 4 years.
it was speculative.
The difference now is we're having an honest conversation with the board and the public on where the budget is and where it needs to get to.
So what do we need to do tonight? Charlene just suggested that we,
Let me just ask another question, please. I'm sorry. Who's going to work with the engineers? Who's going to coordinate all the engineering and the grant administrator? And who's going to do all that?
That's an excellent question, because what we also have not discussed in this budget is Phase 2 of the Bluff. that we have no idea what that number's gonna come in at.
First
Pardon me,
things first.
pardon me, let me
No,
finish.
I asked a question.
Well, you do, and
Who's
I'm gonna
going
answer
to
it the way I wanna
do-
answer it, but thank you for the question, but it's an excellent question. We don't even know what the numbers are with Phase 2 of the Bluff. So, ladies and gentlemen who are in the audience and listening today, this is just the budget. We are not gonna have the money for Phase 2 in the money that we have budgeted for it from the federal government. That's gonna be a pretty big increase on top of this. So at some point, we have to stop saying, who's gonna do this, who's gonna do that? It is getting done right now, and there are a lot of things that we need to plan for in the future, and that is one of them. So it's irresponsible for us to continue to spend and hire and continue to talk about who's gonna do something when that's a whole nother albatross that's coming down the road.
Can't stick your
How are
head
you
in the
gonna pay for
sand and
that?
pretend it doesn't exist.
Exactly, and that's why you do not go out and continue to hire people when you don't have the money to hire them, when you know you have this other tidal wave coming down the road. That's gonna be a burden on the taxpayer. It's irresponsible, Mayor.
It's irresponsible to put your head in the sand and pretend it's not a problem.
I would argue that we have, over the years, and this is, prior administration through today, we are overpaying on a number of large project-related expenses because we don't have anybody who is really riding the vendors, right? Our clerk is doing a lot of that work, but I don't know that she's the person who should be doing, in her role, doing that work. And for that reason, when we first started talking about a village administrator, my feeling is that, if we were keeping it in the budget, it would almost fund itself with savings that might otherwise just be coming through because people are not checking change requests or, stuff like that.
I would love to see the data to support, and if we have it, it would be great for us to see it, where we're losing money from vendors. That no oversight on vendors. If we have the data on that, I think we all would probably like to see it.
I personally think we should be going through all of the large contracts
I agree 100%.
that the village has, right? And,
Exactly.
And determining whether it needs to be renegotiated or go out to bid.
Who's we? Who has the expertise on this board, or who has the expertise to do that?
In construction and contracts?
Any kind of contracts, health insurance contracts, garbage, the garbage dumpster contract with Carter's that was created in 2014 and expired in April 2025 and hasn't been renewed. Contracts that are made with people in the village to pay them to clean the dumpster area.
Mayor, wouldn't that be part of your responsibility as the mayor?
It's not my, it's not really my, it's
Well-
become my bandwidth, but I came in as a village mayor, not as a village administrator, and I've taken a lot of the role and responsibility of the village administrator, some even HR, and it's just not sustainable for a village administration, because I'm not gonna be here forever. So who's gonna do it when I'm gone? And who's gonna have the intellectual and institutional context and continuity to be able to do it? Everything gets lost when the trustees are voted out or new trustees come in and a new mayor comes in. It's all lost because we don't have staff to take it on and run with it and service the community as the person who should be doing it, which is a village administrator. I'm not saying hire an administrator. I'm not disagreeing with removing that position from the budget. But I do feel that the mayor should not be administering the village, should not be, should obviously, is here for legislation, is here for policy, is here to help with strategy and ideas. and then bringing things to the board that can be voted on and decided upon to see which directions the village is taking. But I think the 8A and 8B, I'll make the argument that we need to figure out how to put people in these positions that are proposed, that are internal, like whether it's not a promotion, but internally handled, and the responsibilities become someone who already works here.
Right, and couldn't we do that under 7A and 7B?
7C?
7C?
Well, we could also do an 8C, right? That includes the $90 reduction to resident taxes with the rejiggering of the parking fees to 2 and 3, weekday and weekend respectively.
And selling employee passes.
You could also stagger the hires,
Right.
the hires of the laborer and the
Mhm.
assistant
Yeah.
Yep.
later in the year.
6 months, do
And
it half.
You know, that with a combination of $3 and would probably get you where you need to be. I will just recommend, remind everybody that when we did present the assessment that was done by CGR, some of the points about having a village administrator or some type of institutional knowledge is recommended for villages, especially since, you have a lot of stuff here. You've got a lot of stuff going on. So if you could manage that with internal staff, assuming those roles, if you have a civil service title performing the administration, they're going to be here.
That's determining if we have the staff that are capable to do it.
Yes, and
So
that,
that's a big if.
that's a big if, and that's a board
So,
decision.
Again,
Right.
so I think, first and foremost, before we have these 2 director positions, let's fix this budget, and then we will address it. If we address it next year, we have to get through this year, basically, not overburdening the taxpayer. And, flipping these positions and not knowing if we have the people capable of handling it, that's a variable that could be a problem down the road. So that's why I say 7C seems to be the most logical route.
I kind of like 8C. I think that brings the resident increase down to $173 with the parking.
And the percentages? the
Uh,
tax rate
It would be
increase?
Close to 11 still. Because
No, it would go down from
7B is
10.
175. For the tax rate
right,
increase?
and if we take action on the parking as discussed, that drops by $90,
Yeah, but
right?
so you're
And
saying...
if you take 8B and drop that by $90, then we're at $175.
Yeah, and
increase.
7B is
173,
175.
exactly.
So I said it was 11% tax rate
Right.
increase.
Yeah, I'm saying an 8C would be roughly equivalent
thing
to
as 7B.
current 7B.
Yes, that's what I said, and
Okay,
then you said no.
so we're in agreement.
Right.
Yeah, we agree.
Okay. That's why I was saying, I think an 8C would at least fill 2 positions, but still get us within striking range of what the current 7B is. So if we had to decide which scenario makes sense, I would be voting for 8C, essentially.
So if I just may add, if you did an 8C and you staggered the labor and assistant rec manager, and you didn't hire till December, that would save almost $85,000 additional, which would bring, with the parking change, would bring it slightly less than 7B. So 7C, so 8C would be a greater impact than 7B is. It would be, the increase would be around 160 for the year.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, personally, I think that's where we should land this thing, but, yeah, I'm
And-
just one vote.
I was just gonna offer what the comparison was last year's residential increase. Because, just as a comparison, it was $130 for the year. That's, I'm gonna confirm that,
That was the average last year?
yeah. And that was with a $240,000 tax levy increase, I think.
Well, I think it was, didn't you guys use 240,000 that was left over from the
That
past
was, yeah, but
administration
that
to
was
plug
built,
that?
that was built into the revenues.
Got it.
At one time. So, Stephen, if you were to work those two scenarios and fine tune them to exact numbers and send them to the board, so.
I can do that.
Yeah.
So which,
Thanks, Stephen.
just to be specific, which scenarios, we're looking at 7B, 7C, and 8B, 8C?
Yeah?
And then is, procedurally, Charlene, procedurally, should we be, once we've got that information, should we be voting on which one
Yes.
as a group before Wednesday's
So you
Board
have-
of Trustee meeting where we're voting on the actual
well,
budget?
Can I just back
It was
up for a second?
120 last year.
The adjustments that were, sorry. The adjustments that were already agreed to, that were discussed in scenario one, were those voted by? Okay,
Yeah.
so, I would suppose that all of those would have to be summarized. And then, since everyone agreed to those, those can actually go into one resolution if the board decides. And then the two different scenarios would have to be, unless everyone decides ahead of time, if there's any discussion, they would have to be done by resolution as well. So there'd be two competing resolutions if, for.
Would he
for-
revise the budget and we would vote on the revised budget, or does it have to be by resolution?
No, everything would be by resolution, and then, depending upon how the board votes, which resolutions are actually passed, then after, he'd have
That
you
drives the
could
final
probably have a
budget.
spreadsheet where you could actually, what you might do is start out with the tentative, and then take each one of the adjustments that have already been approved, and then have your other resolutions there, and you can come up with, so the board would have the information before they voted on what the tax rate increase would be and the average increase per homeowner, et cetera. And then whatever that version is, then Stephen would have to go back to his workshop, if you will, and come up with the actual budget. He'd have to amend the entire budget, because this is like sweeping changes
But
throughout.
we have to vote on that budget on
You would-
Wednesday.
You'd vote on the budget as amended, and those amendments would be listed. So
Mhm.
you would be voting on
then
the
he would plug
concept
in.
of all those amendments.
So
and
how
then
do you know all this?
How do I know what?
How do you know all this?
Do you know how many times I've lived through this?
What? As what?
Comptroller, Commissioner of Finance, Treasurer, Village Administrator.
Okay, so you're qualified.
I've been to worse
All right.
meetings than, worse contentious meetings, and
You have?
I've had 300 people in a room, town of Brookhaven, not fun.
Okay.
That's
That makes us
heartening.
feel better.
Yeah. So budgets are always, they're sensitive issues, and this is what happens, but this is very good working communication of how things should go. But basically, it's a lot easier to focus in on what can everybody agree to live with as an acceptable increase. As Stephen just said, last year, you stayed under the tax cap and you were at 130. So if you're getting closer to that, maybe it's 150, and maybe that is something that's a little bit more acceptable for, your residents. And, everything goes up, but if you can agree on an amount, you can find a way to get there by a combination of different changes and additions and modifications. But,
What I would recommend is that there's one resolution for all of the agreed upon changes, and based off of the scenario for 7A, both 7 and 8 are no village administrator, so that would include adding the mayor's salary would be back in. So one resolution for that, and then there would be a resolution, maybe it's blank, to discuss between either 7B and 7A, so that it could be open for board discussion to talk about which one to then vote on.
I want to be ready with it. This could go on forever.
Well, if Stephen sends.
Well, yeah.
If Stephen were to sorry. Stephen were to send out the different scenarios, the board could, by email, decide which one they could live with, and then that would be the amount. And then you'd have a solid agenda for the meeting on Wednesday, and everybody would be in agreement.
That would be
That would be,
ideal.
that would be kind of the easiest way to get through.
Right, and just to be clear, last year, the average residential tax increase was 120.63, and commercial was 229.47.
Okay.
Has to be done by the 1st.
So, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Can we just nail down the process before we leave this room so that we're all on the page? Like, are we going to vote on which scenario then in work session and then finalize the budget?
There's no
Or are
more
we
work
going
session.
to work through 7A through 8C and decide which one prior to Wednesday so that Stephen has the time to put that together so we can vote on it at the bot?
I'm gonna put together 2 sheets, and I'll have one sheet for 7A and 7B and their impacts, and how that represents.
7C.
Excuse me, 7B and 7C, 8B and 8C, their impacts apart from the agreed upon amendments already, because they need to be separated now.
Right.
So that's what I will have. I'll try and have it ready before the afternoon on
Do
Monday.
they need to be separated? Can't we do it all in?
No,
We
let's
can't just
separate it,
do it
because
all in
we
one?
already, already have a whole bunch that we've already pretty much agreed on, so let's separate that from.
whole thing fails.
Well, you could just do, yeah, but 7C would have all the agreed upon amendments. 8C would have all the agreed upon amendments.
Right, but we
too.
haven't voted
So
on that,
one
so-
of them passes.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah,
As a resolution,
true.
I think we can do it
True.
that way,
Yeah.
no problem.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
the question for me is, I know what the,
I do have
the
to
agreed
list every
upon of
change.
402, and
Yeah, that's
I'm
fine.
curious what the delta then is.
Yes.
When we see the actual numbers for 7C.
So I'll need multiple resolutions.
So it would essentially be competing resolutions.
I'll need
Yeah.
essentially
One will
4
pass.
resolutions it's gonna be a very big packet.
They're never
Double-sided.
small, so.
Because we need to
Double-sided,
save
yes.
office supplies.
Double-sided, yeah.
Why don't you just put it in the OneDrive?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to print them out.
The agenda, when we do the resolutions?
Oh, the resolution's going to be, how
Resolutions.
many pages is the resolution going
It's
to
gonna
be?
be a lot of pages, probably. I have to list every single change, because when you present the budget by line item, you have to show the changes by line item.
Okay. All right,
All right.
okay, I think we have a plan.
Hope you don't have any plans this weekend.
Huh?
Hope you don't have any
I
plans
do,
this
actually.
weekend.
This weekend is booked.
Of course.
Monday's gonna
Monday,
be
get here
busy,
early.
and Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Need you to help.
Nah, I got it.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.